From Cali to Tally, it's time to wake up. WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source, and this is Wake Up War Chant. Now here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hudjavandi and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? We're here. Show's ready to go. It's going to be a good one today. Corey, how are you, friend?
I'm good, buddy. How are you doing?
Good, man. Kind of, you were here, then you're gone, then you're coming back. It's tough to put your arms and love you, Corey. You're here one day, you're gone the next. You're a love him and leave him kind of a guy. Never would have thought it.
Well, absence in the heart. You know that old saying. So dude, I don't want you to get too used to me.
Yeah, no, I subscribe to that for sure. I try to tell that to the lady friend. She's not buying it. She likes constant contact. I'm like, I'll just leave you alone for a day or two, and then you can just realize how awesome I am. But I think when you're not awesome, you can't get away with that, so I have to figure something else out to market myself. So, folks, we got a great show. We're going to take some of your questions for the Renegade Express. We're also going to have a great long-ranging interview with former Florida State All-American defensive back J.T. Thomas. J.T. Thomas has the designation, I guess the distinction of being the first African-American varsity football player at Florida State University. So we're going to talk, obviously, about the racial dynamics of being a football player in the Deep South in the late 60s and early 70s. And if you don't want to hear about a black man talk about it being difficult being black in America, you might not want to listen to that part of the show. We'll put a timestamp in there, and we'll let you know so you can be protected from that kind of stuff if that bothers you.
Why would that bother you?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a really interesting interview. And it's something that I wonder, I hope that the current players understand. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, this guy's still a professional. I mean, he's not a professional football player, but he's still a businessman. And he grew up in a time where he had different water fountains. And even in Tallahassee, he shared stories about being told restaurants were out of burgers or out of this or out of that. It's just kind of how some kids were forced to grow up. And it's a sad time in our history. It's a kind of a sad mark on our history, but we hope we're getting better. We're certainly better than it was then. But it's just a really interesting perspective on top of the fact that he played in maybe one of the best NFL dynasties in Pittsburgh in the 70s and was part of 4 Super Bowls. Kind of JT Thomas is kind of lost in history, not lost in history, but I don't think he's talked about as much as he should be with what he did for Florida State, and just how good a player he was. I mean, you talk about defensive back university. Well, he was the first one, really. He went to make his mark in the NFL. First round pick, won 4 Super Bowls, was an All-Pro. Man, he's just a really fascinating guy. So listen to it, fools.
Yeah. J.T. Thomas, Bobby Anderson, Charlie Hunt, Eddie McMillan. They're the 4 pioneering student athletes at Florida State, the first varsity African-American football players. They're going to be part of Sod Talk. That happens, I think, at 2 o'clock. Yes, it happens at 2 o'clock. It's always 90 minutes before kickoff. So it'll be happening next to the Sod Cemetery. Do check it out in the midst of your revelry and the tailgate for the big Wake Forest game. How stoked are you for the Wake Forest game, by the way, Corey? I've felt so, I don't want to say lost, but I was just out at sea. I didn't know what to do with my life on the bye week almost. I know we had the hurricane come through, but I'm ready to get back into the press box and hear you make smart alecky comments about this team not being able to run the ball well.
That's not what I do. What are you talking about? Don't lie to the people.
It's Ira. That's Ira.
You don't need to hear that. Ira says that. I'm the optimist. I'm like, hey, he's about to bust one any second now.
This one right here.
He's going to pull it this time. He's going to keep it and go.
I feel it.
Yeah, I am, and it seems like it's just been forever since they've been in that stadium.
Right.
Just covering a home game. It seems like it's been forever. I think it's been like a month, maybe. It's just I actually am. Normally, you wouldn't say that you're looking forward to a Wake Forest game, but it's a big game on the schedule for the context of this season. But also, it's just going to be good to be back in the Doak again. You know what I'm saying? Back in Doak.
Right. So, ultimately, I think a lot of people have said wins and losses, maybe that's not what we should focus on. Speaking of, George Henshaw, longtime assistant coach in the NFL, also cut his teeth for a while in Tallahassee at Florida State. The sit-down that he did with Ira here recently, and I'll be honest, I haven't read all of the Henshaw houses. That's the franchise that we have running. But this most recent one, talking about the bye week, I thought was a really great revealing read, really well done by Ira to be able to kind of, carve all the words and put it down into something that everybody can read and enjoy. he mentions how important it's coming off a bye week and just the fact that this team improved. It's improved from Syracuse, obviously, to Miami, and that's what he's focused on. George Henshaw, looking through the eyes of a coach, he's just more worried about this team showing improvement week in and week out. And you've mentioned that so many times, too. We need to look at this through a different prism. But ultimately, this game, they have to win this game. This game, to keep these streaks alive that matter to a lot of people, and I guess they both go hand in hand. If they improve, they should be able to beat Wake Forest, we would assume. If they improve from what they played last time they were out against Miami.
Yeah, and it's not a must-win game in the sense that, even if you get to the Shreveport Bowl, it's cool that you keep the streak alive. But, again, in the grand scheme of Willie Taggart's tenure here, this isn't – you don't know that this is a huge game. But for just I do think that he's built up not a lot of goodwill, but some goodwill over the last 3 games, because they kept taking another step. They beat Northern Illinois. They hit some big plays and ended up winning by, 20 points, something like that. Came back, showed some fight there against Louisville after a terrible first half. Played really well in the first half against Miami. So they built up some goodwill because, as Henshaw says, they have shown improvement. So then if you kind of take a step back against a team like Wake Forest, well, any goodwill that you built up, and it's not a ton when you're 3-3, but there's a little bit there. That's all erased, man. You all the goodwill's gone. You're not going to lose a ton of goodwill if you lose at Notre Dame or if you lose to Clemson. If you lose to Wake Forest, there's no really goodwill to have going into next season, because then if you lose to Wake Forest, you're looking at best, in my opinion, 4-8 at best. Yeah. And one of those losses was to Wake Forest. Another loss was to Syracuse. Then you start looking at the season, and there's no goodwill. But if you win this game, if you score more than 26 points, which is what the offense scored against Wake Forest last year, I think you take another step, and there's more goodwill to build up. And I don't know that, how the rest of the season plays out if they finish 5-7 or 6-6, or I just think that this is the biggest game in my opinion. I don't think anybody's expecting them to. I don't think most Florida State fans are expecting them to reach a bowl. They'd be happy, but I think they've come to terms with what this program is right now, and they're just looking for positive steps. Beating Wake Forest is a positive step, and it's kind of something you don't have to do, but if you want to have people on your side going into the offseason that still think you're the right guy for the job and all that, it's an important game. To show up and play well. Winning, losing, whatever. Show up and play well. Take another step. Be better than you were against Miami. Show that it can happen 4 weeks in a row where you take a step.
See, I think it's a really big deal because if they do win and they look good doing it, you talked about you're not going to get dinged. You're not going to get angst from the fans if you lose to Clemson or if you lose to Notre Dame. We say that, and then the games play out, and then who knows what happens, and people get mad. But I think with the energy they had at practice on Wednesday, I feel like they are loose. They are sort of hitting a stride, if you will. And I think if they play against Wake Forest the way that they're capable of, if they can build off what they did against Miami, they'll win. It'll look good, and I think that that keeps adding bricks back to this thing to get people, I don't want to say back on board, but again, to feel good about things, because we're not going to get into the whole making bold proclamations about, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Was he a good hire? Was he a bad hire? It's just crazy to talk about right now. Absolutely ridiculous. But they go and beat Wake Forest. I think the fan base feels so much better about it. I think the players, they need to also start reaping some rewards from the physical practices and looking better. Looking better is cool, but they want to get some wins under the belt and keep those streaks alive. I don't think these guys want to be part of the first team that didn't make it to a bowl game. I think Greg Reed, to a certain degree, willed himself in that team to not be those guys when he returned the punt against Maryland. I don't think anybody wants that distinction hanging from them. So I'm interested to see how they're going to look. I think they'll beat Wake Forest. They should beat Wake Forest. They're a double-digit favorite. But, man, it'd be good to see them win comfortably. It'd be nice to see them win 35-17, hang maybe 40 on them, and then give you a real sort of good feeling going into what's going to be a really tough stretch, but maybe a game that you can win that's going to even be a bigger signature win for the program. Obviously, Wake won't be.
Yeah, and I just think that if they take another step and play better than they did against Miami, and against Miami they played better than they did against Louisville and et cetera, they will beat Wake Forest. Like if they play again as well as they did against Miami or better, which you hope they play even a little better, then they'll beat Wake Forest. So that's what you're really looking for. The win will take care of itself if they play well. And so again, you just want them after a 2-week break, after a bye, to not come out and be lethargic, to be in a hole early, which they always seem to be at home. They're always down. They're always giving up. It seems like they're giving up first quarter touchdowns or first drive touchdowns, and they struggle a little bit to just play well, just to give the fans something to see and another glimpse into what's happening and how the program is turning around.
Oh, I'm stoked. Can't wait to get back.
You're stoked. The Demon Deacons are coming to town.
Yeah, got a good feeling, man. Practice observations from Wednesday. They're changing the Rubik's Cube, Corey. I'm not going to call it the deck chairs. They got a Rubik's Cube, and they're twisting it and they're turning it. So the Bavion Johnson at center experiment, I don't want to say it was short-lived, but if folks were banking on that creating a huge sort of a turn, or that was going to be some sort of magic elixir, might not be happening. But they're trying, man. They're experimenting with all sorts of different guys. They had Arthur Williams, I think, and Jawan Williams back out there when they were doing the whole 11 on air drill. So we'll see, obviously, who's going to be the starting five for them. But we got to speak to the defense. So they were working, obviously, on creating turnovers because they want to get that backpack out there and get everybody excited. Are you more – I mean, I feel like this defense is obviously probably closer to a ceiling than the offense is. The offense obviously has so much more room to grow. Are you more interested to see how this defense is going to look, maybe now with Marvin Wilson emerging as a dominant, game-changing defensive tackle, or are you going to have your eyes more focused on what this offense is going to look like, how Francois is going to look, and what the run game is going to be able to develop?
No, definitely the offense. I mean, I think the defense has been solid all year. I certainly don't think it's been spectacular. It's struggled at times, especially in the passing game. It's given up too many big plays. Yeah. They got to get better in the secondary. But I think unless the defense implodes, you kind of know what the defense is going to give you. Pretty good, not great. Maybe force a couple turnovers, force some punts. The offense is what's been, anchoring this team to the ground a little bit. So that's where you want to see the most improvement. This defense has been good enough to at least be 5-1, and well, quite frankly, to be 6-0. The offense, by any measure, is the reason they're 3-3 and almost 1-5. That's all on the offense. Save for maybe you could say the first half against Louisville, they were pretty awful. The defense was, but then they rallied back. But otherwise, it's the offense. Willie Taggart is an offensive guy. If he wants his program to take off, it's got to show much improvement on offense. So that's obviously always where I'm going to be looking at the most, is at least for the foreseeable future, is how this offense continues to evolve and you hope improve.
Yeah. See, I asked Harlan specifically about Levante because it feels like that was two games that he had put together, Louisville and Miami, to where I don't really remember him being beat, at least not like in a very – in a key moment that was a back-breaking kind of moment, or that surrendered a touchdown. I have to go probably back and look at Pro Football Focus. But I just kind of asked him, with the way Levante's playing and his role in this scheme, when he is playing as well as it seems like he has the last few games, how does change the defense? And he said this, when he's playing well, when the cornerbacks are playing really well in this defense can be very, very good. They can be very special. So that kind of caught my ear because they've been so high on Asante Samuel and A.J. Litton that these younger guys, if they're going to be able to give them some depth behind Kyle Myers and Levante, and if Levante can kind of hold down one side of the field, I think that's what his role is by and large in this scheme, is that he just kind of he's working off the ball. I mean, he's staying on a receiver and playing with his back to the ball most of the time. So, I mean, if that's what I'm curious to see, because you talked about they've been solid but not spectacular. But if Kyle Myers can learn to turn around, gosh darn it, and these young guys got a little bit better during the off week, and I know this is a good Wake Forest offense, but that's a good part about it. This is a challenge to that defensive secondary. If they can kind of firm things up, then I think this defense moves up a whole nother level, and that's obviously a great thing and can even help out the offense.
Yeah, you know who I want to see more from, and I don't know if it's necessarily his fault. It's always hard to tell with a secondary player, but Stanford Samuels, is a good player, man. Go start making an impact. I mean, it's hard to imagine a kid with that kind of talent, former 5-star, who proved last year he's got a chance to be a really nice player, to have less of an impact through 6 games. In my opinion, I mean, I'm not saying he's playing poorly. He just hasn't made. You want him to be out there making plays, and so hopefully he can get. He's just kind of almost been like a forgotten dude back there, right? You talk about Nasruddin, he leads the team in tackles. We've obviously talked about Levante, good and bad. Kyle Myers, good and bad. The new corners. We don't ever talk about Stanford Samuels ever. AJ Westbrook's made some plays. Stanford Samuels, if this secondary is going to be what it could be, he's got to. I'm not going to say get right, because that implies that he's doing things wrong. He's just got to find a way to make an impact.
For sure. And I think, I don't know how much of that ankle injury that he sustained leading up to the Virginia Tech game is.
But you got to hope he's healthy now, right? Yeah, I mean, that was a while ago. He had a bye week. You got to hope he's close to 100% now going into the second half of the season. And they're going to face some teams that are going to challenge them vertically. So you want number 8 back there making plays.
Yeah, if Levante keeps his play up, Hamsah keeps doing what he's doing, and Kyle Myers is going to be pushed by these younger guys, whether it's Asante or whether it's A.J. Litton, and then Stanford can emerge as that Zeus, that field side safety, then that secondary could maybe live up to the high promise that I kind of foisted upon in the offseason. So we shall see soon enough.
Before we step aside, or at least some point in this show, we need to talk about Generis Robinson.
Okay, for sure.
I don't know if you want to do that now or you want to wait, but
let's go. Let's talk about it now. I should have started off the show with it, but this is what happens when you pre-produce and pre-plan things out.
Thank God I'm here, or we would just be talking about
Wake Forest,
the defense and the offense all the time.
Life's bigger than football. I mean, I'm sure you heard the interview that Generis had with the reporters before practice on Wednesday. It was heavy, man. That's a big dude who just experienced heartbreak and has got a family that's depending on him. And, I just thought that he showed a lot of poise, a lot of maturity. I could only imagine if I had to leave my family and lost our family home after something as crazy as like a hurricane, man. I was extremely impressed with the way he handled himself in a really tough moment.
Well, and also I think what needs to be remembered and always remembered, so there's a GoFundMe page set up for Generis to have a new home. That Florida State got I don't know what you'd call it, a waiver from the NCAA to be able to promote a GoFundMe page that Generis has started to rebuild in less than 24 hours. And as we're recording this, it's been less than 24 hours. The goal started at 50,000. Well, they've already gone past that. In less than 24 hours, it's already $53,000.
Awesome.
And so, I think it looks like he changed the goal to 75,000, because I don't know how much he can really even rebuild for 50,000. I think he started off like lowballing it, thinking, okay, we won't get many contributions. And now I'm sure it's overwhelmed him and his family already. And my point here is twofold. Number one, that's awesome for Generis. That's really neat that he gets this, that he has a chance, his family has a chance to rebuild through the kindness of strangers. And I kind of want this. I'm not trying to get on a high horse here, but if we all remember early in the season when certain players or other people in the program were on social media talking about you're either with us or you're against us, don't be a fan now. All that stuff that 19-year-olds are going to do. They don't have the life experience necessarily to understand what fandom is. But, man, I hope all the players in that locker room kind of see what it is to be a Florida State football player, in the support, the vast support that the Florida State fan base gives those guys. Just you're part of a family, man, and I just hate seeing some of that stuff on social media when they lose games, thinking that all fans are those idiots that are saying mean things to them on Twitter or that are trolling them. Those don't represent the Florida State fan base. Generis Robinson's GoFundMe page represents the Florida State fan base. That's what this fan base and a lot of fan bases around the country, when one of their own needs help and needs support, those fans are there for you. So I just hope the players on the field appreciate that, because they should. because that's a really neat, wonderful, terrific thing that the Florida State fan base is doing for his family.
Well said. Can I also offer a alternate viewpoint?
Sure.
So everybody wants to pay the players, like screw the NCAA, pay the players. How about this?
Sure.
You want to pay the players, everybody? Be the bad guy. Once Generis Robinson makes a sack, go ahead and donate to his GoFundMe, but under the guise of not helping him rebuild his home, but you want it just so he gets the money, so you can stick it to the NCAA. Show the NCAA who's boss.
We don't want to get kids ineligible.
That's a crazy thing. How does this work? Like, for example, I'm a Florida State fan. And I haven't gotten around to giving Generis Robinson money. But then he goes and gets 2.5 sacks or scoops and scores a fumble. And I'm like, you know what? Son of a gun. I forgot to give him the money I meant to do earlier in the week. Now let me give him the $30 or the $50 or the $100. It's funny how the NCAA is an absolute clown show. But at least they got something right in this case. And seems to have given the green light to allow Florida State to make this public and, as you said, generate a huge sum of money for his family. I mean, he used the word nuclear bomb. He said it looked like a nuclear bomb got dropped on his house. And this is a home that not only he grew up in, it's not only his childhood home, it was the home that his mother grew up in as well. So no amount of money will replace those memories, but giving yourself a home is always a huge part of the human experience, man. So shout out to Generis. I think his Twitter handle is GenerisD1. So look him up on Twitter and you can see the link for it, because I don't even know if we can tweet out the link from Wake Up War Chant, because that's all nebulous because the NCAA is still the NCAA.
Well, then what did you just do? Oh, you said you just gave his Twitter handle. Yeah.
Check out his Twitter handle.
I retweeted his tweet.
All right. Good stuff for you, Corey. You're always better than I am.
Yeah.
All right.
How we do.
Now this is the time we'll step aside. We'll come back. We'll talk to one of the greatest to ever do it at Florida State, J.T. Thomas. You'll hear that right after this on Wake Up War Chant.
You're listening to Wake Up War Chant, all Noles, every day. Now back to Corey and Aslan.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around.
Welcome back, everybody. As promised, the best part of the show. You guys like the interviews because you have to, hear from other people and less from me, which is always a good thing. Joining us now, J.T. Thomas. Your reputation precedes yourself, but we'll give you a little of the background in case you don't know, kids. We got some of the younger folks listening in. J.T. came to Florida State in 1969, and his very first game with the Noles in 1970 blocked a field goal. Helped the Noles win 9-7, ended up becoming a All-American defensive back in 1972, and then messed around in the NFL for 9 years, won a whole bunch of rings with the Pittsburgh Steelers. JT, thanks for being here, man. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm being the best me I can be.
That's all you can ask for. So JT, sometimes, usually on Thursdays, we'll have our recruiting analyst, Michael Langston, join us, and he talks about the crazy world of recruiting. Obviously, with the way the dynamics were in this country back in 1969, things have obviously changed a lot, and we're still trying to get better on a lot of fronts. But what was it like just being recruited as an athlete back in those days in terms of, was it just you would come to a campus and sit down and talk to a coach? Did they wine and dine you at all? What was that whole process like?
No, that wasn't that kind of after I arrived in Florida State. Prior to that, you have to understand, African Americans to play at FSU, and prior to my senior year, I had no idea or aspiration for college or where I was going, because although schools had been desegregated, none of the schools in the Southeast were actually recruiting African American ball players. So going into my senior year, being at a white school, I had no idea or aspiration about going to college, because there at that time, white schools were actually recruiting black football players. And being in a white school, none of the historical black colleges even saw me. So in my senior year, there was no hopes of college or anything of that nature. No. And I'm sure a lot of guys in the Southeast have the same problem. It wasn't like it is today, where you get scouts and coaches and recruiting you. No one was coming.
So how did it go about, how did Florida State get in touch with you, or how did you get in touch with Florida State?
Well, what happened is everyone knew, I guess it happened to my senior year. There was a reporter in Macon, Georgia, by the name was Harley Bowers. And Harley Bowers he called the University of Georgia, and everybody was aware that the opportunity was there, but it had not been actually engaged. So Harley Bauer, and that's my coach, a guy named Godfrey Steiner, who was running back at Georgia at the time. But had played at Georgia. Said, listen, why don't we call the University of Georgia and see if they are interested in allowing J.T. Thomas to be the first African-American football player at the University of Georgia. Well, they did. Well, I don't have to tell you who the coach is. You guys know his name. He said this. He said that we're not ready yet for an African-American football player or a black football player at this time. What happened is that week, about 2 or 3 days later, I got a call from Coach Bill Peterson. And he said that I had read the article that Georgia said that they weren't ready. And he said, but we are ready. And those words, we are ready, actually were the words that sealed my heart, my deal at FSU. Now, after that, as I progressed through that season, there were other teams that showed up. Tennessee showed up and knocked on the door, a few other schools. But the fact that Bill Peterson said, we are ready, that was a slam dunk. And I ended up, going to Florida State. So it was nothing I had planned. I had no money to go to college. Like most African Americans in the era, there was no aspiration to go to college. There wasn't the recruiting like it is today. And especially if you are, like I went through the integration process from a junior high school. So the historical black colleges were not looking at you. So really, it was hopeless in terms of football.
That's crazy. That's amazing. That was the climate of things when you were trying to play college football. So you do arrive at Florida State. Do you instantly sort of realize the gravity of the fact that this is going to kind of be attached to your name, your family's name, and you for the rest of your life? You're going to be the first African American varsity football player to play for this university.
Yeah, well, you have to go back in that time. The walls of Jim Crow were still up. They weren't down yet. People they forget that era. We're coming out of the Vietnam War. You had racial discord in the country. You had women's lib. You had the drug movement. You had the hippie movement. So there's a lot of things going on at this. America was going through a very transformative era. So, coming to Florida State, it wasn't just about me because I'm not just playing for my mom and my homeboys. I'm playing for the Deion Sanders that hadn't got there yet because, you were told that you could not compete academically or athletically. So it wasn't just about me and my home ground or my team. No, it was about African Americans in general. So it was a very weighted banner because if you fell or didn't succeed, both on the athletic field and academically, well, you succumb to the stereotype, to the racism, all those things that had existed, over hundreds of years. So it wasn't just about J.T. Thomas. It was about Deion and the Jameson coming behind me, and so it's a different game. Like I say, I was in '69 when I got to Florida State. I'm less than 4 years off the back of the bus. I'm less than 4 years from getting a hamburger from the back of Burger King. So those are the dynamics that you're dealing with, and you're in the South. I think people tend to forget what was going on at that time.
JT, did you see a shift at all in your time at Florida State? I know, you were playing, but in the crowds and the way people interacted with you in classrooms, could you see a shift?
Yeah, that was a shift. You understand, I was, if you look at the civil rights movement, FSU was integrated about 1962, and there was a phase of what they call desegregation in '62, and the process was about in the late 60s. That was the actual integration, because in '62 you had blacks attending campus during the day, but they weren't on campus at night. So the whole plan of integration was based on first to desegregate and integrate. I was part of the socialization group, but you have to understand, we had been weaned in high school and junior high school in how to integrate and socialize. So basically, that was I had been groomed, and most guys that came in at that time, we had been groomed from junior high school through high school to actually integrate and living on campus. So it was a change happening. In this country, yeah. I mean, it was. But you have to understand, Jim Crow was still alive. I mean, there was a lot of things going on, even at FSU. Experiences that we had. There are certain places where we went in, they wouldn't serve us. In Tallahassee, on Tennessee, we walk in at 6:30 on Friday afternoon. Well, we're out of burgers. We're out of pizza. Okay, thank you.
There was that famed story of Branch Rickey with Jackie Robinson, where he told Jackie he couldn't fight back, and Jackie's like, I think it was like, don't you want somebody that's strong enough not to fight back? And his response was, I want somebody that's strong enough not to fight back. How hard was it? And at times, you're a proud man, and to hear things and see things, it had to be hard at times to keep your cool.
No, well, you have to understand, like I was saying, we were conditioned civil rights movement. When I was 12 or 13 to 14, I'm from Macon, Georgia. So I had seen Dr. King, March with King, had been in protests at an early age. You have to understand the civil rights movement was really a lot of young people was in it because basically your parents would get locked up or they'll lose their jobs. And, so young people, we were at the crust where we were becoming black and proud. That was a theme then. And really, we were different from our parents. So the civil rights movement really was actually propelled by young teens, young people. Because young people, that's the same reason they don't send old men to war. They send young men to war. They're kind of dumb. But nevertheless, it was a part of my, my life. I grew up in segregation. I grew up, I could read the word colored and white before I could write my name because we were taught in Sunday school at age 3 and 4 on water fountains how to read those two words. So you're conditioned in a process of segregation and separate and equal. At the same time, you realized it wasn't fair, and there was an opportunity in the civil rights movement that I was a part of. And there were times that you were, and if you were Dr. King, I guess in that time it was about nonviolence, and you were taught to, in a sense, not to fight back, or sometimes, and there were times that you wanted to. Yes, I'm not saying that you haven't. And even at FSU, we had some experience at FSU that people are not even aware about, or not even cognizant of. When we were there, there was a lot of things going on. And a lot of things that we experienced that we haven't talked about, But we were part of the change, and we understood what was happening, and we knew how to maneuver through those. It's kind of like a wild animal or any animal in the jungle. Most animals are very cognizant of their environment, so to survive. So in order to survive, you had to learn everything about your environment. So you develop these antennas of where you could read people, read situations, and you're not aware of that. Just conditioned to know your environment very well. It's kind of like a deer standing around a pond. That deer knows everything within 360 degrees of it at all times, and anything startles, comes at it, it is gone. And so you develop those antennas also living, in the South at that time because it's about survival. You have to know, where you were safe and who wasn't safe. Yeah.
4-time Super Bowl champion, All-American defensive back for Florida State, J.T. Thomas, the first African-American football player for Florida State University, joining us here on Wake Up War Chant. JT, we hear so much about coaches and players talk about how in a locker room it's the ultimate meritocracy, right? It's no matter who you are, where you come from, how you play on a football field is what determines your standing in a locker room. Was that the case in 1970 in a locker room in what kind of equates to being in the Deep South in Tallahassee, Florida? Were you welcomed into that locker room? Did Coach Bill Peterson ever have a discussion with you or the players to make sure it would go as smooth as possible for you, or was it just kind of a not spoken thing?
Bill Peterson, he was from up north, so he had been around blacks. So that wasn't new to him. I'm sure not all the coaches had been. And And some of the players had this was their first experience too. So all the players there were not, even keeled in terms of their perspective. It was new to them, and so we felt that. And some players came around, some came around later than others. That was just a part of it, It was just we were foreign items, in an environment where people had not dealt with. You had a lot of even athletes they never played with blacks or been in that close proximity, And most of us had because we're in integrated schools at age maybe 14 and through the high school. But for a lot of athletes, it was their first, endeavor. And how do I relate to, these African Americans? But one thing about what sports does, sports really put life in perspective because what happened, you learn very quickly. And it's a rule I call the 95% rule. And basically, I didn't call it that then, but I call it that because 95% of everybody is the same. We're the same wants, desires, fears, anxiety. Now, we may express it differently because of background educational level, but I learned through athletics that 95% of all people are the same on the field. Now, your 5% is height, weight, taste buds, those type of things. And what you learn that your 5% cannot survive on the athletic field. So it's kind of like in math, you find the common denominator. The numerator doesn't matter. And athletes find out very quickly that 95% is all the same. That's what I'm doing with athletes. And I think athletics has been the catalyst for relationship because players bond very quickly because they're not dealing with what society deals. Society deals with the 5%. And, we would never reconcile that. My 5%, your 5%, that would make us unique and different. But that's what most people parade around every day with, and as a result, we have conflict. The athletic field force you into your 95%, which you find out very quickly, this guy is just like you. And that's the phenomenon about athletics. I think that most people, as fans watching, wonder how can these guys be on one accord where they're so laser focused and in unison. Well, it's because they're dealing with the common denominator, which they've learned that this guy is just like me. Because it kind of exposes who you are athletic. You can't, your 5% doesn't. Like I said, that dog was on the hunt on any athletic field or court. It doesn't.
What's it been like now, being, so far removed from the program, not even so much in terms of years, but just geographically? What's it been like just watching this program from Bill Peterson over to Daryl Mudra to Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher, just watching this little school in Tallahassee that, you got your start at, become a powerhouse, and then now give Willie Taggart a chance to be a head coach at a Power 5 program at his dream school coming from Oregon?
Well, I think it's part of evolution. It's life. Life runs cycles. There's nothing new in life, and I think life, it dies. It has its high points, low points, and I think FSU is no different. You go through the cycles and life, and so does sports. It's no different. It's just a part of life. Things are planted, seeds grow, they die. It starts over again. It's just a process. And I think that's what is happening. But and it's good too that it does start so because what happens, you learn value systems. You learn most things you learn from adversity. You learn nothing from. I never learned anything from a great play I had. Okay? I learned when I got beat on national TV. They ran it back 6 times and showed the whole world. Or when I got ran over, those become your learning tree. So sometimes I think adversity. And sometimes what we call being in the valley, those are your moments of growth, your moments of inspiration. I think those are the moments that the cataract falls off and you see life for what it really is. So in a sense, I kind of welcome adversity because it becomes my learning tree.
JT, can you sum up, and I don't even know if it's possible, what it was like to be a young, athletic, great football player in a city like Pittsburgh and go through the 70s. I mean, that just seems like the absolute sweet spot to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Not just the championships, but it seems like that town so identifies with that team. Just what was that like, and that kind of fame and celebrity at such a young, and notoriety at such a young age like?
Well, at that time, we didn't realize how good we were, but what we did realize that the time we were emerging as a team, the city was going down with the steel mills was making an exodus out of here. So what happened, Pittsburgh, which was they were the steel capital of the world, was losing it, and they had one thing to hang on that represented them. It was the Pittsburgh Steelers. The steel mills were moving out. When I came here, this was like the Central Valley. We had, this was the third largest corporate headquarters here. But then, people moved out. Gulf Oil moved out. Alcoa moved out, and people had nothing to hope for except the Steelers. So they embraced us. They owned us, and at that time, they had access to us. So we didn't realize what was happening because the Steelers hadn't won for 40 years also until 1972 when Clayco Harris came. And that was their first winning year. So, and with the Immaculate Reception, I came in 73, and, so we have one thing left here, not the Steelers, we have the Steelers. So we grew up with them, they embraced us, but the thing about it, we had this great talent that we weren't aware of. And we didn't know it until much later. Probably after our second Super Bowl, we realized we had just a dominant force. I think we had 11 All-Pros starting on defense. I mean, who have 11 All-Pros on defense? You can't afford 11 All-Pros on your team. And we had these 11 All-Pros on defense to get the Swan, the Stallworth, the Bradshaw, the second on offense. It was unique in a sense, but we didn't realize until after the fact, going into our fourth Super Bowl, that we were a powerhouse. We were just young men playing football, and we knew each other differently than other fans. We knew our weaknesses, we knew our strengths, and what we did was just know a shark doesn't know it's a shark; it just know what it is. It doesn't prepare itself. So we had all these great athletes like the Mean Joe Green, the L.C. Greenwood, the Dwight White, and Jack Lambert, Bradshaw, Swan, Stallworth. I mean, that's all you know. And so you look back on it and you say, wow, we had some great talents. I didn't realize that Mel Boyd and I was considered freak even today because of our size. We averaged 6'2", 195 to 205 in the secondary, and we ran 4.40. That was normal. I didn't know that was freaky. Compared to today, we are bigger than most defensive backs that play the game and was just as fast. So, but we didn't know that at the time.
JT, we ask all of our guests this question. So we'll go to your Pittsburgh days. If somebody had snatched your mom's purse and you could only have one of your teammates go with you to get it back, like who was the baddest man that you ever played with that no one wanted to mess with?
Well, the baddest was Jack Lambert. The meanest was Joe Green.
And he lived up in the name. Joe was mean. We weren't mean. Joe taught us to be mean. We weren't mean. Joe Green was mean, and the Steelers adopted Joe. And so Joe Green is probably the cornerstone of the Steelers today because the Steelers allowed him to be Joe Green, and they took on Joe Green's personality. But Joe's the meanest guy I ever met. And like I said, he taught us to be mean. Lambert was probably the one. We're not a dark alley. Take Lambert with you. You'll probably come out. Yeah.
All right. That's what we need to know. Awesome. Folks, JT Thomas will be part of a great cast of former Florida State greats at SAW Talk. It'll be 2 o'clock right by the stadium before the Wake Forest game. JT, thanks so much for the time. Safe travels on your way down to Tallahassee.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. God bless.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Yeah. Chick-a-doom, chick-a-doom, chick-a-doom. Yeah, that's the joint. That's the joint. That's the jam. Turn it up and play it again.
Wake up! Let's go, Corey. I'm revitalized. I'm re-energized. You've been bringing the gusto. Made me think about Generis. I was contemplating that as we were playing the J.T. Thomas interview. Good damn day to be alive. Let's do this. Oh, do you hear that? Do you hear the galloping? Is that the galloping of the horses? Is it time for the Renegade Express? It's time for the Renegade Express, Corey. You on board? You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Rookie baby. Hi, Corey and Aslan. Great show. Halfway home. Keep up the good work. Maybe great work, but we'll take good work. I know what kind of season we were going through and understand that we are in rebuild mode. I know Willie Taggart has much to prove here at Florida State. My question is, do you guys find comfort in the fact that Oregon and USF are doing so well? They seem to be running Willie's offensive system still and are having great success. To me, this is comforting, and it makes me believe it can all work out once the right pieces fall into place. Or am I alone in this thought process?
Yeah, we kind of talked about that in yesterday's show, and yeah, I think it should give Florida State fans great comfort that that what he especially to South Florida, again, like I said yesterday, what he brought to South Florida, the culture he brought, it's obviously sustainable, and that doesn't mean Charlie Strong doesn't get credit for sustaining it. He does, and I'm sure he's done some of his own things too. But that was a program that Willie Taggart built, rebuilt really from the ashes of, well, I was going to say hell, but that doesn't really make sense. But from the depths, he rebuilt that program, and now it's a top 15 program that wins 10 games a year. And Willie Taggart, I think that should give Florida State fans a lot of comfort. In Oregon, obviously, he certainly didn't sabotage that program either. Like, he turned that thing around quickly. Again, Cristobal gets a lot of credit for it too. I don't want to give it all to Willie Taggart. He was just there for a year. But he certainly didn't hurt the program, and I think, in fact, he turned it around a little bit and got it headed in the right direction, and now it's Cristobal's program, and it seems to be doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, Cristobal's a really good coach. I mean, he was at Alabama before he went to Oregon and was hired as our offensive coordinator. They have a really good defensive coordinator in Jim Leavitt. I do like Harlan Barnett. You do wonder how this offense might have looked. I mean, no offense against Walt Bell, but just – maybe, I don't know, Mario gets a little more leeway if he would have been able to follow Willie down here to Florida State. He was a really great offensive line coach. I don't even know why the FIU thing didn't work. I don't know who FIU thought they were in the first place to get rid of Mark Cristobal, but he's a really good coach. The fact that Oregon looks this good, I mean, they look much better than they did last year with Willie. Now, that's because they have that quarterback back, but I don't even know.
I'd say they look about the same with the quarterback.
But, I mean, they beat some really good teams, Corey, with that quarterback. I don't know if they beat those really good teams last year, even with Justin Herbert. I mean, they got smoked by Stanford last year on the farm, like 45-3. I don't know if Justin Herbert's WAR or points above replacement is 42 over Tyler Burmeister. I'm not being a contrarian to being contrarian, but I don't know how much of the Oregon stuff you can really give Willie credit for. I mean, I don't even know if he was literally there for an entire calendar year. The USF stuff, I guess you can say that's somewhat encouraging. They did have a good run of success with Jim Leavitt, and then Skip Holtz ran into a freaking iceberg. But Willie rebuilt that thing, retooled it, and the best guy in their program's history offensively is gone, and they're still rolling. So I guess maybe he put a good culture in there, but Charlie Strong found out or got himself a good quarterback to keep that thing chugging along too. So yeah, it's good. I guess he was at places that had won before and have won since he left too. So yeah, awesome. Enol_2000. Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well after Michael. What's been puzzling about DeAndre is that I think most of us thought he would have had the exact opposite issue of what's going through him right now, and that is I thought he'd be treating the football like a hot potato, making very quick throws and doing whatever he had to do to get the ball out of his hands ASAP. ASAP means as soon as possible. given that he's been pulverized the past couple of years, I can't believe that he still drops back and holds onto the ball like he thinks he has the Dallas Cowboys offensive line protecting him. Does he think he has to wait for the perfect separation point from one of his receivers? Because we have some dudes that can make plays as long as you throw it in their direction without waiting to be killed by an opposing defensive lineman. But then again, maybe he's the kind of guy who likes a little bit of pain.
Well, yeah, that's a theory.
He's a masochist.
That could be true, I guess. Yeah, man, it's all of it. I think I certainly don't put all the blame on DeAndre or even most of the blame on DeAndre. It's the guys blocking for him up front that aren't any good. He just doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't help matters with the fact that he holds on to the ball too long, except in the running game, where he gets rid of that bad boy as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It is curious that he's not getting rid of the ball quicker. I don't know how much of it, again, is him just being a pro-style minded guy and how much of that he has to get rewired if it'll ever happen.
Be good to see this week too, right? Like, I know they weren't here for a few. I guess they only really missed one practice. I don't even know if they missed a practice. It was just a different schedule because of the hurricane. But he's had 2 weeks now, so let's see the improvement he's made. That's another thing I'm looking for, man. Okay, does the quarterback look any different at all running this thing? Yeah. Because Willie wants him to scoot up, and Willie wants him to tuck it occasionally. Are we going to see that on Saturday? Is he a little healthier after 2 weeks off of not getting hit? All that stuff. That's all stuff that we want to see. That will again kind of paint our viewpoint of what this coaching staff is.
What I find curious or interesting is that, I mean, they work on the stuff in practice. Like, literally, they'll have these guys, they'll roll a Swiss ball, like one of those big bouncy exercise balls you like see in an aerobics class, kids, gentlemen, ladies. Like, they'll roll one of those balls at the quarterback. The quarterback has to sidestep it and then move up and then throw the ball. I mean, they're drilling, and they've done this since spring. They've done it since the first practice that the staff got into town, that any staff does, of making your quarterbacks work on keeping their feet moving, keeping their eyes downfield, evading the rush, moving up in a pocket. Like, they're drilling this stuff, and he's just not doing it. And I don't know how much of it I don't know how much of it they're drilling into his head, like during film study, like, dude, after Syracuse game, like, dude, he was open. Why don't you move up? Miami game, dude, they overload the right side. You weren't going to have more than 0.5 seconds. You got to throw that away. And I don't want to say that they're not telling him that. And at the same time, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is a smart kid. He knows football, that he knows he can't do that sort of stuff. And that's the craziest thing. And we'll never get an answer as long as he's on campus or on the record. It's just, why has this been such a tough thing? It seems like a pretty easy concept, right? Like, move up in the pocket, get rid of the ball faster. And he just hasn't been able to do it. And you would assume, like the guy who asked the question, Enol, that this is a guy who just came off a really gnarly knee injury, has gotten the crap kicked out of him every single time he's played for Florida State, that maybe he would just he'd want to get rid of the ball. But I don't know, credit to him that he's hanging in the pocket and trying to go for the big play, because it's easier to score on a big play than it is to run the ball 2.8 yards per time. Next question. Bo Knowles. Good morning, gentlemen. And Aslan. Oh, that's an insult. Let's go to the next question. FSU guy, 1989.
That's a play on the Seminole headlines. What they do with me all the time. They say, hey, gentlemen, and Corey.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Bo Knowles asks, my question, Levante Taylor, dominated preseason. As an avid Wake Up War Chant listener, I remember the Coracle saying he could not remember even seeing a single pass caught against him. It's not his size. He was short last year and in camp, and he played like a 5-star lockdown corner. So what do you fellas think has happened with him this season?
Well, I mean, again, I think we talked about it last segment, or the first segment of the show. The last 2 weeks he's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the reality of the situation is unless you are an athletic freak, unless you are like a Minka Fitzpatrick or a Patrick Peterson or one of these Jalen Ramseys, you're going to give up plays. It's being a cornerback is giving up plays. Remember the guy from Michigan that was a first-round pick? Nooney Murray beat him with a game-winning touchdown catch just jumped over him and mossed him.
Yeah.
Or as I call him, he Nooneyed him.
Yep.
And also had a 90-yard touchdown on him. I mean, sometimes good cornerbacks give up plays. You just hope, if you're a Florida State fan, that all of Levante's plays that he gave up were all kind of clustered together. But if you get thrown out a lot, the reality is you're going to give up touchdowns. He has not been great. He certainly hasn't looked great in his technique on some of those plays. But if we're just judging from the past 2 weeks, I think he's been pretty good. So let's just hope that he got all that out of his system. And now he's still going to give up plays, and he still probably give up a touchdown or two, because that just happens, especially when you face as many pass attempts as Florida State does, because it seems most offenses realize they can't run the ball, so they just throw it every down. But by and large, if he's doing a good job, and I think he's like third on the team in the PFF rankings for the season, third or fourth, you just hope that he got that out of his system. Maybe it was early season nerves because it's a money year. Who knows? But if he gets back to his fundamentals and technique, you got to hope he's going to be the guy that we saw last year.
Yeah, I think it's conjecture. We don't know, but I think maybe some of that plays into it is the whole money year, maybe pressing a little bit too much. I don't know how much of the ones that he did get beat on, how much that was him being in man coverage, how much of it was zone responsibility where maybe he didn't make the right reads. But I believe in the kid, and I think, Harlan Barnett does, and he's going to have a really tough test against your boy Dortch coming up Saturday from Wake. But
they all are, man. That kid can play. That kid's electrifying.
Yeah, here we go. All right, FSU guy 1989, sup dudes. Could not agree with Aslan more. It's tough to see your loss devalued when Miami loses to Virginia. Thank you, by the way. People were trying to say, I was mad that Miami lost. I'm glad Miami lost. It's just a bummer that Virginia could beat them and we couldn't.
I mean, but who cares if your loss is devalued? In the great
how
scheme
good
of
are
things,
we?
you want Miami to lose games.
But how good are we? That felt good, right?
Not very good, but didn't we know that already?
But it's number 16 Miami. We're talking about all this growth that they've done week to week, and they're number 16 Miami. You had a 20-point lead on them, and then you watch them lose to Virginia. You're like, well.
But you couldn't have watched that game. Actually, as we actually watched it play out, you couldn't have watched that game and thought, wow, that Miami team's pretty dang good. They were ranked high because of what? I don't know, because they won 10 games last year.
Yeah.
They got thumped by LSU. They beat a bunch of nobodies, and then they were down 27-7 to the next team that had a pulse. Yeah. And then they got lucky and won that game. They're just not very good. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you want Miami to be as bad. I guess my point is, it's not like Florida State's playing for anything. It's not like their strength of schedule, their game control is coming into play here. So by and large, you just want you want Miami to lose.
Right.
Just what
misery loves company. Misery loves company. You just want
to lose, and if your loss is devalued, all right, man. I think we know that Miami wasn't very good. I think what gives you hope is that you were beating them by 20 points on their own field.
And they are better than Louisville.
That's what gives you hope, is that's the team that maybe you can be.
Yeah, and they are better than Louisville, and you played them really good. So I guess there's that.
Yeah.
FSU guy.
He took some steps.
He continues, speaking about Miami, sure, go ahead, get blown out by Clemson in the ACC championship game, but for the love of Pete, don't lose at Virginia. Also, anytime Florida wins, whether it's by 1 point to LSU or 50 points against Air, they lose it, and they think they're all that. Exactly. That's why I hate them, and I'm so nervous and angry. I cannot tell you how many Florida fans think they are going to the SEC championship game and doing anything other than laying down and surrendering 100 to Alabama. UF is not that much better, historically speaking, than Florida State, even though they like to think they are the premier football school in Florida. Anywho, my question is to Aslan. What are your thoughts that Florida State and Florida are on opposite trajectories? I still feel that they are going slightly up, but will crash in a year or two, and we are taking a slight dip before shooting into the stratosphere. Yeah, it would sure be good to see them fall flat on their face, but, 2 bad coaching hires in a row, they can't keep sucking all the time. Listen, Dan Mullen's going to get them good. I think their floor is going to – I think they're going to be like a 9-10 win floor team with him. I really do. Unless Jeremy Pruitt gets Tennessee back and rolling. I mean, he's going to constantly beat Vandy. I'm sure he's going to end up beating Kentucky every now and then. He won in Mississippi State against the West. He beat LSU here and there. He beat Auburn here and there. And he was not recruiting the caliber of athletes that he's going to have at Florida. And I know he's going to lose a lot of those battles to Willie and to Mark Richt. But I still think he's the kind of guy that's going to be able to find guys that will fit his system, and it'll work out pretty well for him. I don't think Florida is like the preeminent school now in the state of Florida. I don't think the road goes through Gainesville. But it sucks. I would have liked to see them suck from day one. This just it's hard to say, oh, this is like some sort of, newlywed phase. It's an aberration. But maybe it is. I mean, look how good, Will Muschamp looked in year 2, and then they quickly fell off the side of the earth. But I don't like it at all. It pisses me off. I don't like seeing Florida do well at all.
Well, what should give you solace, though, is what if you end up losing that game at the end of the year and Florida has a good record, well, then your loss isn't devalued as much because they have a good record.
Tennis Ump. Hey, guys. My question is that I was wondering if there is any thought of trying to bring Coach Henshaw on board as a special assistant, like how we were doing with Coach Andrews. Seems like he would have a lot to offer. Thanks.
I don't know that he'd want to do that.
Yeah.
I think he kind of likes not having to be at practice every day, I would think, maybe. And, I can't imagine there's been any thought to it. Not that he wouldn't, Willie would welcome them or want some, everybody's looking for advice, I guess. Or maybe not. Maybe that's the thing, man. Maybe you don't want a bunch of chefs in the kitchen. Like, Mickey's one thing. But Mickey was here for 30 years, and it's the second most important person in Florida State football history. So he definitely, anytime he wants to be on the sideline, chomping on a toothpick or yelling at refs, he should be allowed to do that.
Damn right.
George Henshaw's a little different, and I love George Henshaw. And the stuff he does on War Chant is awesome.
It's fantastic.
That we do every week with Ira and him is really great. But I think that's, selfishly, I think that's the perfect role for George Henshaw. We don't want to lose him at War Chant. And if he went and became a special assistant, then obviously he wouldn't be able to give us his insight on a weekly basis.
Or maybe he could. It would be off the record.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Last question.
Now we're talking.
Let's land this puppy, Corey. Maxwell Gibbs. Here he is. He's joking, everybody. Corey would love for the show to be 3 hours daily, but he keeps telling me that we have to keep it 1.5. Howdy, gents. It's almost basketball season, and since we're a basketball school in the making, when will we get our daily dose of basketball on the show?
Okay, I would say in another couple of weeks maybe. They open with Florida, so that's kind of a big deal. But in all honesty, a daily dose will be probably not till, December or January.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're right. I would say it's a softball school first, and then we go to basketball maybe or soccer.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm actually excited. This will be a fun team to watch. Again, I don't think they're not the number 8 team in the country. I know they finished in the Elite 8, but let's not expect them to go 29-4 or something crazy.
Right.
Just get in the tournament and try to make another run again. But they should be a fun team to watch. And I know they really like the transfer kid from Albany. I think that's an upgrade from C.J. Walker.
David Nichols.
They lost the big kid. That's a loss, especially defensively.
Ike, it is.
Obiagu to Seton Hall or wherever he went. Good luck, man. But other than that, man, I'm excited about this team. It'll be cool to see Kofor with his 6th year, and you have to imagine Cabangeli will take a nice big step. Trent Forrest, MJ Walker. I mean, it's a talented team, man. And Terrence Mann's back for apparently his 9th year. I mean, it's just a lot of experience, a lot of tournament experience, a lot of big wins that these guys have been a part of. So it's set up to be a pretty fun year at the old TLC Double C.
He says, with the NBA season having officially tipped off, here are my 3 takes for the season. I have them on this card right in front of me. They are fire hot takes. These all come from Maxwell.
Who is this? Is this Max? Is this old Maxwell?
Yeah.
Good. I was hoping because you remember when I texted you earlier this week and it's like, hey, man, before you forget, be sure to get Maxwell's thoughts on the upcoming NBA season before we sign off for the week.
There we go. 3 takes. 1, Boston will defeat the Warriors in the finals. 2, Kevin Durant will leave Golden State in the offseason. And 3, I'm sticking to it that the Lakers won't make the postseason. Sorry, not sorry, LeBron. I would drop the mic, but I have a headset.
I don't know about the first 2. I wouldn't say those are crazy hot takes. Boston's really good, and they have a great coach.
Yeah, come on,
and a lot of really good players.
Come on.
And you can't imagine the Warriors will be as hungry. And I don't know what Durant will do after the season. Maybe he wants to go be his own guy again, like the number 1 guy. But I will say that there is, unless he gets hurt, there is 0 chance the LeBron James team doesn't make the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's implausible.
Yeah.
The dude makes the finals every year, and I know it's in the East. The dude makes the finals every year. You could make an argument he's the best regular season player in the history of the sport. He's going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, come on. Him, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball.
Greatness.
Get some. Brandon Ingram, get some, Maxwell Gibbs.
Come on, MG. You're better than that, MG. Don't bring us NBA takes anymore. Give us a college football take next week.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. We'll do phone call Friday, mañana. We do have one more
How
show
long was
left
this?
in the
Was
week.
this a 2.5 hour show? A 4-hour show?
Man, it was like a little bit over an hour. Tighten up. Corey.
Oh, all right. It felt like it was about 6 or 7 hours. But we really do appreciate everybody listening to it. That's not a joke. I know it sounds sarcastic because everything I say sounds sarcastic. But we appreciate you guys listening. Godspeed. We love you all.
It's football season in Tallahassee, and the only place to go for FSU apparel and merchandise is Garnet and Gold. Locally owned and operated by Seminoles for Seminoles for nearly 40 years. Garnet and Gold has the best selection of FSU merchandise in town, but what we really sell is tradition and passion to serve you, the true Seminole fans, at all 3 of our locations, West Pensacola Street, Killarn, and our flagship store across from Regal Cinema. Online at garnetandgold.com. Shop local and go Noles.